So, is time travel possible? The idea of people zipping back and forth from the present to the past or back to the future has fascinated humans for ages, and there is some scientific evidence to support the possibility of traveling through time. Now, even Albert Einstein said, quote, "The distinction between the past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion," end quote. So it does sound like he's saying there's a chance. With that in mind, let's check out these 10 cases of unexplained time traveling. Number 10. Future selfie. Have you ever tried to find yourself? Well, in 2006, a 36-year-old man from Sweden named Håkan Nordqvist claims to have indeed found himself, and in a future incarnation no less. Håkan claims the incredible meetup stemmed from a fairly pedestrian occurrence. While attempting to fix a leak underneath his sink, he could not seem to reach the pipes, so he crawled further and further into the cabinet, and suddenly he was in a tunnel. When he reached the light, he somehow knew he had arrived in the future, to the year 2042 to be exact. Now that is where he met his future incarnation, now age 72. Future Håkan seemed to share a lot of secret knowledge that only his younger self could know. Before returning to the present, the younger Håkan took a selfie with his elder version. Now this story generated a lot of interest, as you might imagine, but it's also said it was just part of a clever marketing scheme hatched by an insurance company. Now which story would you rather believe? Number 9. Flight to the future. Sir Victor Goddard was considered to be one of the founding members of Britain's Royal Air Force, so this story has never been easily dismissed. In 1935, Goddard was flying his biplane to Scotland from England. Near Edinburgh, he passed over Drem airfield, which had been built during World War I. Since then, the tarmac and hangars had yielded to pastures that were filled with grazing livestock. During his return trip the next day, Goddard encountered a violent storm during which he lost control of his plane. He recovered from a downward spiral in just enough time to reverse course and fly back upward. Now, the skies were brilliantly sunlit, and below Goddard was, again, Drem airfield. Only now the pasture was gone and the tarmac and hangars appeared to be fully operational. He noticed yellow planes there and mechanics in blue uniforms. Goddard later came to believe that he had somehow traveled forward in time to 1939 and saw the rebuilt Drem airfield as it would appear 4 years hence. Number 8. Queens for a Day. More officially known as the Moberly-Jourdain incident. This story sounds a little bit like that movie Somewhere in Time from 1980. Now, if you recall, in that flick, Christopher Reeve essentially hypnotized his time travel from the 1970s to 1912. Well, in this story, Charlotte Ann Moberly and Eleanor Jourdain were two young women visiting Versailles in 1901 when they claimed to have slipped through time to see Marie Antoinette sitting on a stool in her estate called the Petit Trianon and sketching. Marie Antoinette, however, was executed in 1793. When a tour guide approached the two young professors, the long-dead queen and several other people wearing the attire of 18th century France suddenly disappeared. Now, the women later found a picture of Marie Antoinette sitting and sketching outside the identical location where they had seen her. That convinced the pair that they had either traveled back in time, possibly experienced a ghost trace inspired by the memories of the executed queen. Because the two women were highly educated and well respected, the story was granted some credence, or at least the benefit of the doubt. It became one of the most reported time travel stories ever. Number 7. The Chronovisor. Have you ever wondered if there might be a TV-type device that might let you tune into events from the past? Well, this device, the Chronovisor, was said to have been co-invented in the 1950s by a Benedictine monk named Father Pellegrino Ernetti, who is said to have been inspired by Nostradamus. Ernetti claimed to have been part of a high-tech team that included rocket scientist Werner von Braun and Enrico Fermi, who won a Nobel Prize in physics. According to the monk, he had used the Chronovisor to tune into several major events from the past, including the Last Supper of Christ and his crucifixion. The team had later decided to dismantle the machine due to concerns of it possibly being exploited by a dictatorship. Now, as proof of the device, Father Ernetti offered a picture that was supposedly photographed through the Chronovisor, an image depicting Christ on the cross. Now, that picture was later confessed to be a fake, but Ernetti still insisted that his device was the real thing. And there are a lot of people out there who seem to share that belief. Number 6. The Philadelphia Experiment. At some point in late October of 1943, the U.S. Navy carried out a top-secret military experiment at a naval shipyard in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. a vessel known as the USS Eldridge was rendered invisible or cloaked to enemy warships. The Eldridge was also said to have been teleported from Pennsylvania to Norfolk, Virginia, more than 200 miles away. Now, during this incident, the warship is said to have gone back in time for about 10 minutes. Casualties of the experiment included the crew members' bodies being fused to bulkheads, to rematerializing from the inside out, to outright vanishing from the location. There was said to be one lone survivor of the Eldridge, a man known as Alfred Bielek. When the Philadelphia experiment was adapted for a movie in 1984, it was reimagined as a story of time travel. Number 5. Firebombing foresight. Did a German newspaper reporter and his photographer uncover a story more than a decade before it happened? As the two men visited a Hamburg shipyard researching another story, they heard the drone of aircraft engines and saw the skies filled with warplanes. As bombs rained down upon them, the photographer snapped pictures as the inferno raged. When the film was later developed, there was no evidence of the devastating attack. The men's editors accused them of being drunk and fabricating the whole story. The duo moved on, but in 1943, Hamburg was bombed by the RAF during a series of raids known as Operation Gomorrah. Hundreds of bombs turned the city into a firestorm that killed some 40,000 people. Now, the German reporter, by then living in London, noticed that the pictures of the shipyard looked exactly what he and the photographer had seen 11 years prior. Number 4. The Green Children of Woolpit. The village of Woolpit is located in Suffolk, England. Chances are you've never heard of it, but a bizarre event took place there in the 12th century. A young boy and a girl were found near the town's wolf pits, which inspired the town's name. Thought to be brother and sister, the two children had skin that was colored green, and in addition to speaking an unknown language, the pair wore clothing that the villagers were completely unfamiliar with. The children were taken in by a home, and over time their green coloration faded. But the boy died soon after. The girl managed to learn the locals' language and eventually related a strange story. She said that she and her brother came from a place called St. Martin's Land, which was dark and everything was colored green. While tending to the father's cattle one day, they followed the animals into a cave where they became lost. As they followed the sound of the cattle's bells, there was a sudden loud noise, after which they found themselves in the wolf pits where they were discovered. Now, explanations for this story have ranged from the children coming from a mystical otherworld to the green-colored kids being some sort of extraterrestrial. But many people feel the brother and sister could have arrived from the future through a time slip. What do you think? Number 3. Time-traveling cell phone woman. Charlie Chaplin made a movie in 1928 called The Circus. Decades after its release, the film was noted for a single scene involving a woman who seemed to be talking on a cell phone. Pretty remarkable for the late 1920s. While Chaplin was a visionary, it is unlikely he foresaw the rise of mobile and wireless communications. There was a lot of speculation that the woman, dressed in a coat and hat, was really a time traveler and had traveled to the past where she appeared in Chaplin's movie. The way she holds the alleged mobile phone, along with her gesticulations as she seems to be having a conversation, do actually echo the behavior of today's smartphone users. Skeptics say that the woman may actually have been listening to a portable radio, although that would not account for why she seems to be talking into it. A definitive answer for the woman and her alleged mobile technology still has not been given. But we can definitely tell you this. In the list of credits for The Circus, it does not include a role called time-traveling cell phone woman. Not unless the past was altered, anyway. Number 2. John Titor. You know all about how to use a DeLorean as a time machine thanks to the Back to the Future movies, right? But how about using a 1987 Chevy Suburban for that purpose? Well, that does not have quite the same cachet now, does it? Well, at any rate, a guy named John Titor made some headlines late in the year 2000 when he posted to online bulletin boards that he was a time-traveling American soldier from the year 2036. Now that sounds kind of like a movie. Titor's story went that he was initially sent back in time to 1975 to gather up an IBM 5100 computer, which supposedly could fight off a fatal computer virus that threatened the mid-21st century. He later stopped off in the year 2000 in order to visit his family. Now, some of his predictions involved graphic accounts of a nuclear war by 2015 that would annihilate around 3 billion people. Well, happy to say that one did not come true. Number 1. Time-traveling hipster. Now, maybe it wasn't a case of time travel, but it was definitely a case of a viral internet phenomenon. Around 2010, a picture showed up online from 1941 which appeared to portray a young man in a very modern-looking attire. The young fella's wardrobe looked so out of place for the early 1940s that a widely promoted theory arose that the guy was a hipster who was traveling through time. Now, whatever you want to believe, debate about the picture is still ongoing and does not appear to be ending any time soon.